Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Zara, and I am an advisor at the EducationUSA Karachi office. I graduated from NYU with a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy, and today's session, I will be talking to you about the importance of extracurricular activities. So this is primarily for students who are trying to go for a bachelor's degree in the US. Undergraduate applications look at your extracurricular activities. And so this session is just going to take you through kind of the various types, what you can do to bolster your activity list, and some suggestions for how you can present that in your college essays. So we will be doing a few polls in between. We want the session to be interactive. And if you have any questions, please wait until the end of the session. We have dedicated time for that, so you can just put your questions in the Q&A box at the end. So before I start the session, I just wanted to introduce you all to EducationUSA. EducationUSA is your official source on US higher education, and it provides free advising services to students who are thinking about pursuing their bachelor's, master's, or PhD in the United States. We are part of a US State Department network of over 400 advising centers in over 170 countries. So EducationUSA has centers in Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi, and all of our centers are staffed with advisors who have firsthand experience of studying in the US, which we use to inform our advising sessions. So if you're interested in registering for our free advising services, you can visit our website. We also have an app now, so you can scan the QR code on the screen and then use the app to chat with advisors during work hours or to get event alerts and more. And advisors have, so like if you can chat with advisors during business hours, which for us is 9 to 5 in Pakistan. Right, so the college application process can be a bit daunting. So EducationUSA has kind of broken down this process into 5 steps, and our advisors help with all 5 of these steps. So everything from researching your options to financing your studies to completing your application, applying for your visa, and even preparing for your departure. So this is just a broad overview of how the application process goes. For this specific session, we'll just be focusing on your actual application and the extracurriculars that go into it. But broadly, this is sort of an overview of what you should be looking at if you're applying in the next cycle. So I wanted to ask all of you why you're interested in studying in the US. And I'm actually gonna just launch a poll for this. So it'd be great if you can put in your answers and then we can talk about it. Wow, so thank you everyone for answering our poll. I'm getting a lot of responses that mention quality of education, which is awesome because USA has one of the best, the US is one of the best places for undergrad and graduate for higher studies generally. It's very well renowned all over the world, and they have, US universities have great recognition. They have quality of education, so professors from all around the world, and basically, if you have like a US degree, it's going to be a globally known and valued degree. And this is just sort of like an overview of some of the other reasons that students have for pursuing education in the US. So, diversity is a big one, and flexibility of courses, especially at the undergraduate level. You may not know what you want to study yet. So the US is a great option because it lets you pick from a variety of different courses. You can do double majors, you can minor in something, you can change your major in the middle of your studies. So it's great for for students that are maybe not that sure about what they want to do, or students who just want to do multiple things. Which brings me to our topic for today, which is extracurricular activities. So what are extracurricular activities? Broadly, essentially, it's it's basically any activity additional to your academic activities. They can be kind of outside of the normal curriculum of school. So this can be like an activity that's like voluntary, it can be philanthropic, it can be arts, it can be just like school clubs that you're partaking in after school. So those are broadly what colleges count as kind of extracurricular activities, but we'll go into more detail on what those are and what they comprise of. But before we do, I want to ask you all another question. So I'm generating another poll for this, so please put in your responses. That is, are you involved in extracurricular activities at the moment? Okay, so majority of the people here today are involved in extracurricular activities. I'm curious to hear more about that. What extracurricular activities are you doing currently? Are they in school or outside of school? And how long have you been doing them? Feel free to like put your responses in the chat. I'm curious to hear from all of you. And while I wait for that, I'm gonna move on and talk about, why extracurriculars are important for your college applications. So, broadly speaking, they help students kind of explore their passions and their career interests. You develop a lot of real life skills by participating in extracurricular activities. They also importantly strengthen your college applications. So participation in them is usually linked to higher academic performance. And usually, and this is something that colleges value as well, it's the fact that participating in extracurricular activities is beneficial generally to a student's social development. So a lot of great reasons to, partake in activities outside of academics, but a few other reasons, just looking at the perspective from a college advisor, is number one, like, especially after COVID, there's been a lot of uncertainty with regards to standardized testing. So a lot of colleges now are going test optional, or they're just not even accepting SAT scores at all. And, after like COVID is pretty much considered over, but a lot of the effects of it we still see today. So colleges have realized that maybe the SAT is just not that accessible to a lot of people, or that maybe they don't need it the way that they thought they did to evaluate a candidate. And they're focusing more on other metrics to kind of discern the caliber of an applicant. So now more than ever, the other components of your application are so important. Similarly, the pool of students that are applying every year, they're getting smarter, it's getting more competitive. Everyone's grades are competitive. If you have like 10 students and they all have the same level of A's, how do you decipher between them? One of the ways is your college essay, but then another super important component is going to be the extracurricular activities you do, and what you're passionate about, what you value. Those are things that come through based on the activities that you've been involved in. Whereas academics can be a little more generic and a little harder to stand out in. This doesn't mean that academics are not important. They are definitely the backbone of your education, and they're the backbone of your college application. But it's just that now they're not everything. They never were for US universities, but there's a greater emphasis now on who you are as a person. So just bouncing off of that, passion and purpose is what's important to colleges now. And they're really looking at people who kind of can take their passion and wield it towards something that has some kind of an impact. There's so many things happening in the world right now that, you know, need our attention, and colleges are interested to see, like, is this an individual who, beyond just getting all A's or, you know, having a really high SAT score, are they gonna contribute to some broader objective or goal? Is there a purpose that they're aligned with? Or are they, you know, are they like passionate individuals? Are they people who know who they are and what they want? It kind of showcases all of those things. And it's also a way to kind of know maybe what your future self looks like. So it's really easy for someone to say, you know, I'm going to be like the president, or I'm going to, you know, start an NGO that helps like endangered orangutans. But it's a lot harder to prove that. So one of the ways that you can do that is through the other activities that you've taken part in, that you've maybe excelled in. They show that you're actually committed to the things that you're saying you're committed to, and that you have some broad goal that you're hoping to achieve. And those are the kind of students that colleges want to invest in. They're the kind of students they want to, you know, have on their campus, because then ultimately they're going to be kind of like the superstars that also make the college look good, but they're the ones that will gain the most out of that academic experience that they have to offer as well. So it's like a two-way street. Beyond that, these are a couple of, you know, skills that you develop as someone who's participated in different extracurricular activities. So if you've done, you know, something in like a club, something that requires teamwork, you'll usually develop listening skills. You'll learn how to work with other people. Maybe you learn some leadership or how to communicate with different kinds of people. You know, that's not something that's stressed, especially in like the CIE system, if that's the one that you're in. Similarly, you learn to kind of like think on the spot. You learn a bit about emotional intelligence or decision making. These are also all important assets of your personality, especially when you go off to college. Just knowing how to read and write, it's a skill, but it's not all you need to be able to do. These are all soft skills that are going to help you get forward once you get to college, because you're going to be in group work, you're going to be doing creative things, you're going to be you know, interacting with students from all kinds of places and like all kinds of cultures, and how you meld with them and what you contribute to that community and to that environment is something that colleges care about. They don't just want a student who's going to show up to campus and, you know, get really good grades, but do absolutely nothing else to have their presence felt in that college, because they're creating a community. They're not just trying to churn out students that have perfect transcripts. So these are some of the skills that you should think about as well when you're looking at the, you know, extracurricular activities that you maybe want to pursue. Which brings me to my next question, which is how to get started with extracurricular activities. So there's a bunch of ways that you can do this. One way is to join, you know, school clubs or groups, maybe something that your friends are in. You could ask around if there is anything that interests you. Usually a lot of students, if they're in A-levels or if they're in a school before going off to college, which unless you're taking a gap year, you will be. That's a really good starting point to look for potential opportunities. You can also, if you have a specific cause that you're maybe interested in, you know, you can like reach out to local organizations. So reach out to community centers, animal shelters, like even just in Karachi, there's so many off the top of my head. Like I'm thinking of, you know, if you're interested in like conservation, there's like WWF or IUCN. If you're interested in social welfare or teaching, there's TCF, or like there's the ED Center. So, you know, like a lot of different options for students who are committed to a specific cause. And if you don't know what that cause is yet, that's fine. You can still get involved, because that's ultimately like trial and error is how you'll figure out what that is, right? Maybe if you volunteer for like 3 different organizations across the year, you find that you align with the purpose of one of them way more than the other, and that actually helps you develop like discover something that you were interested in that you previously weren't, which is ultimately going to help you both for your college application, but also throughout college life, for you to know what it is that you are passionate about and what you find purpose in. Similarly, if you are academically inclined, maybe you're interested in research or the arts, you can do stuff on your own. Look for specialized courses of interest. Maybe you're like a graphic designer, look for courses on UI UX, or you're interested in coding, so maybe learn a bunch of different softwares on your own, or visit local undergraduate universities here and reach out to professors, find out if you can do any research projects with them if you're interested in research. To a lot of different things. Students think that the end all be all is official internships and being like the president of their school XYZ club, but actually there's so many ways that you can be involved, and you can demonstrate interest, but also learn important life skills, really, which colleges want to see. Like, you're going to be 18 or reaching 18 when you go to college, so they expect you to be adults. They expect you to have some real life experience, and that's what extracurricular activities help you achieve, essentially. So I've already talked a bit about this, but I just wanted to reiterate, like, what kind of ECAs count. So, community service, a lot of students already know about this. They've already partaken in it. I just recommend that even if you are going to go the community service route, or if that's something you're interested in, that you try to think about which cause it is that aligns with you, rather than just kind of blindly going for like, 200 hours of community service or like 400 hours of community service. If you can't really reflect why you're doing that or what it means to you, it's not going to be as valuable or as impressive. Similarly, you have school activities. So a bunch of different ones you can do based on which school you are in. But even if, like, let's say there's a club you're interested in or a skill you want to learn and you maybe don't get in on like the first try, ask fellow students or alumni, like, ask them if you can just shadow them, or maybe you don't make like the lead of your school play, like, can you be cast as an understudy? Can you take notes from the director? Like, there's always something that you can do to kind of get your foot in the door, even if you're not like the star on your first try. And similarly with like passion projects or skills or talents, like, if you're an artist, maybe you just like sit in your room and paint, and maybe you try to submit your portfolio to a college website, to a college application. Maybe you enroll in literary or art festivals. We have local ones in Pakistan too. Apply for like prizes, apply for competitions. So yeah, a lot of things just outside of school you can also do based on what you're interested in. And so just on that note, I have another question for all of you. So if you could answer this next poll, which is, what kind of ECAs have you done? Okay, I see sports. Community service, nice. Curious about what type of community service people have done. Yeah, I see public speaking, speeches, debates, school public speaking club. Nice. I'm curious to hear about what kind of internship students are doing. Are they related to your field of interest, and how did you even acquire them? There's like 5 people who said they've done internships, so I know at least 5 people can answer that question. We have one person who's done academics. Okay, nice. But yeah, I mean, it seems like people are doing a broad range of ECAs, which is awesome. The whole purpose of activities is that you go for what you're interested in and what resonates with your personality. So no one's ECAs would look exactly the same, or even if two students are in the same school club or like both into music, there's still going to be differentiating factors because what it means to you is going to be inherently unique to you, which is also why ECAs are so important, because they help you kind of stand out as a unique individual with an actual personality beyond just your transcript. So another question that we get a lot, thank you for participating in that poll, everyone. Another question that we get a lot is, how many extracurricular activities should I participate in? So a lot of students think that, quantity is what's important. And that's not really true. So we would say, don't be tempted to sign up for like every club or, participate in all of the sports, or also start a part-time job and like also volunteer and also be doing corporate internships. The quality of your extracurriculars matters much more than how many are on your list. So colleges are not looking for a laundry list of ECAs. They're more interested in how these activities shaped you as a person. So essentially, the commitment that you showed in your high school ECAs over potentially, a more extended period is going to mean a lot more than just being a member of like as many clubs as possible over a short period, because all the admissions officers know that you're just doing that to get into college, and they don't want that. They want you to do it because you love it, because it means something to you. So yeah, participating in dozens of extracurricular activities is not necessary. And there's no perfect number. The Common App, which is the portal you use to apply to colleges, it gives you about 10 tabs on the activities list page. So I mean, if you're at the near end of high school, you probably have done a variety of things, but the amount of activities that you've meaningfully engaged in should be narrower, and you should think about the ones that maybe resonate with you, that you participated in more, and that maybe mean the most to you in your future goals. And speaking of future goals, I also wanted to talk to you guys about how to decide which ECAs to do. So there's so many options to choose from, right? Like I just discussed. And whether or not a particular activity is right or wrong for you, that kind of depends. It depends on a few questions. So question one, what are your goals for the future? If you really want to be like an engineer, maybe you don't have to join the art society if you don't want to. You can have different interests, and that's unique and that's special. But if you're confused about what to go for, or you're not really that interested in everything, then one of the ways you can maybe narrow down what to do is see if it will teach you something that'll be beneficial for maybe what you want to do in the future, or what kind of career you want to have. Similarly, you should think about whether or not you enjoy it. So again, part of the whole idea of ECAs is that it showcases who you are, and it showcases some form of authenticity. So if you don't like it, there's no real point in doing it, because A, you're not going to do a very good job, and B, colleges will probably see right through that. They're going to see that you're just kind of forcing yourself to do something versus actually doing it because you like it. So similarly, you should ask yourself, is it going to teach you something valuable? Like, let's say that you hate standing out in the sun, doing like a charity drive, but there's a reason for it, right? Like, you think that it'll teach you patience, maybe it'll teach you humility, maybe it'll teach you to think about someone besides yourself. Like, those are still good reasons to maybe do it. And in that case, I would say maybe if that actual act isn't as enjoyable, maybe the outcome of it is, or maybe you've thought about what you gain from it or what you learn from it, and that's why it's meaningful to you. This also goes with like whether or not it builds your character, like sometimes it's okay to do something that's different or that doesn't align with maybe your ultimate goal if you think you'll still be gaining something else from it. So like maybe you're like super shy and so you try out for like your school drama because you want to get over like your shyness, you want to be more outspoken. So in this situation, you're signing up for something that maybe you don't enjoy or potentially are afraid of, but there's a reason for it because you think it might build your character. It might teach you some skill that you think would be valuable to have. And then finally, you should think about, is this extracurricular activity bigger than you? So this goes back to kind of, your purpose, or like trying to find your purpose. And, there's such a variety of things now that students care about or engaged in. Off the top of my head, like I know that I, in the past few years, have started caring a lot more about the climate and about like different species and conservation of species. So, think about maybe the long-term impact of this activity and what you might want to do if you took it further. That would be another reason why you maybe decide to do it. So yeah, a lot of different reasons. It doesn't have to be a bigger purpose, by the way. It can also just be like you just love it. Like maybe you just like love music. And so that's what you want to do, and that's cool as well. These are just some of the reasons, but there can be others. Okay. So how do you demonstrate meaningful engagement? So I spoke about this a little before, but like I said, colleges don't want a big laundry list of things that you've done. What they want is for you to demonstrate meaningful engagement. Now, what that means is, and the way that you can do it is, one way is you say, this is an activity that I've done and it's super important to me, and you show that because you've been doing it for like 5 years. So that is adequate proof for a university that this is something that you actually care about. You're not just doing it for the sake of your application. Let's say it's not something you've done for a really long time, but you progressed at it really quickly because you really cared about it. So let's say you're now in a leadership position of a particular organization, is your school or club. That's another way to showcase that this is the activity that you really care about, or that means something to you. And then another way is maybe originality. So let's say you've only been a member of an XYZ club for a short period of time, but you came up with unique and original ideas on how to maybe make it better, or something that you wanted to do on your own, an initiative that you maybe wanted to take. You could highlight that. So not every ECA needs to be substantiated with a certificate of completion. There's kind of a lot of ways for you to shine in your activities list. It just depends on how much original thought you give it and how much actual passion that you put into it. And before I get into sort of, the different types of ECAs, I want you to tell me what you think would be the most important for you now. Good. So let's talk about some potential examples and how you would kind of showcase them, right? So let's say that you're interested in the arts. These are just examples off the top of my head are like from various students across the world on like ways that you would showcase that. So for example, maybe you worked for a particular art facility. You could say you were a drama captain at your school, and then you would kind of talk a little bit about what you did. So I really like this example that a student wrote about being a playwright and publicist. And it says she wrote, directed, organized rehearsals, lighting, sound for a school play. I like it because it's succinct, but it still gives enough detail to show that the student was actively involved, and it's not super dramatic or accomplished either. Like, it's very accessible. It's very much something that you could also do if you're interested. Similarly with academics, these are just a few other examples of ways that you could showcase interest in your academics, or ways that you maybe participated in it. So let's say you were like a leader of like a math problem solving society. You could talk about that, or maybe you've competed in like various competitions related to science or math or English. Maybe you led a bunch of students in a specific organization or competition that was academic in nature. You could even, like in the last example, the student actually talked about what topics he taught and prepared a team for. So this is great because it's really specific on what the student did, what they were interested in, and a measurable experience. So another example is community service. So, you could say, if you're part of the community service club in your school, you could talk about how, all the work that you did, what kind of charities you initiated, how many students, or what the audience number was. There's a lot of measurable impact in these examples, which is really important, especially when you have limited word count in your application. So, could be as simple as like, I was a teacher volunteer at like TCF or KDSB, and I created like a curriculum on my own, or I like did my own short research project. So a lot of ways for you to kind of showcase your interest in any one of these areas of ECAs if you care about them. So now I want to pivot a bit to how you actually talk about your extracurricular activities. And a lot of students, they kind of make this mistake of just like listing down every single thing that they did without much thought into what the most important and salient points of it were. So for example, like, you want to think about maybe using stronger verbs, which is really important. You should want to describe your activity in like a dynamic way. And, if you just use bland or passive language, even something outstanding that you did could end up sounding very mediocre. You should also think about like the content. So what were your responsibilities? Did you learn any soft skills like problem solving, or any sort of tangible impact that you maybe had? Then think about like the skills and the values that you learned from the activity. So are you communicating kind of how that activity changed you? If you're not, then you're kind of missing out on an opportunity to do so, because again, you want to think of how it relates back to you, not just be like, I did X and Y and Z. That on its own isn't really enough. So yeah, use stronger verbs. And this is a really good example that I have. Or like, let's say that you have a student and they're a member of the debate team. You write something like debated topics and attended tournaments and research topics. That sounds kind of redundant, and generic and not super impressive, right? But like think of stronger verbs that are more specific. An example is taught. Instead of saying taught, maybe you could write I coached or mentored, trained. It provides more information. It also shows that you were a more active participant in that activity. Similarly, think of like the verb organize, maybe replace it with cataloged or compiled or systemized. Yeah, so just think about the language you're using when you're explaining the ECAs that you did, because it's also important to reflect on what you really learned from them. So like a much clearer and more interesting and varied description to just I debated topics, attended tournaments and research topics would be, maybe I led research in case writing, I mentored young debate students, I organized mock debates, I hosted an annual debate tournament. So do you see how many like active verbs are in that explanation? It's the same thing. You're still just in the debate team, but now you've given it quantifiable impact. And it sounds a lot more impressive on your application. I also wanted to talk about this particular example. So this is a student who wrote about their ECAs actually in their common essay prompt. So the prompt was some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. And I'm just going to give you a minute to read the essay. This is just the conclusion of it before I talk about, some of the techniques that the student has employed. So I really like this, really like the conclusion and takeaway from this essay, because while it's stating a lot of ECAs, it's stating them very matter-of-factly, almost as if they're inconsequential and almost like it's a laundry list. It's a very effective writing technique that the student has used, because he's trying to go beyond just the activities and talk about who he is as a person. So, I'm not any one of these things. I'm not a test score. I'm not a debater. I'm not just a writer. Yeah, I am an anti-nihilist punk rock philosopher. And he's saying I'm not any one of these things, but really what he's saying is this is the values that I got from each one of these things, and what I actually am is a culmination of each one of them, but it goes beyond just a base description of like community service hours and ECAs. Like he's giving us a clear takeaway of who he is at his core, after he has already amassed all of this experience. So it's kind of an advanced technique, but I wanted you to take a look at this and see these are some of the ways that you can kind of weave your activities into your essays, because only when you have sufficient experience can you then denounce, maybe the superficiality of some of it, and get at what it is that you really, really care about. So even if you do a few activities that you maybe aren't that interested in or that don't resonate with you, that's fine, because it'll probably help you get to the kind that you actually want to do, the ones that actually align with who you are as a person. So that's kind of it for my presentation. I have a final poll for you that I'd like you to answer, and then I will take any questions. So it's quite a simple question. Are you doing any extracurriculars this summer? Okay, nice. We have a bunch of students that are. I'm curious to know what those are. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so a majority of the students are involved in some ECAs, which is great. I'm gonna end this poll now because I think almost everyone has participated. And I'm gonna just open the floor for any questions that anybody has. Okay, I see a bunch of questions here about like transfer procedures and college applications, and we help with that, but that's not really relevant to the session. So just feel free to shoot us an email, and I'd be happy to kind of respond to queries related to that. Yeah. Okay, so I have a student who has asked about learning Taekwondo for the past 2 years. Yeah, I would say definitely would be considered like a good ECA. I mean, it depends on how you showcase it. But really it's about how you present it. The fact that you've done it for 3 years is great. It shows demonstrated interest, it shows commitment. So there's a question here about like ECAs when you have transport issues. There's a bunch of ECAs you can actually do remotely now, especially post-COVID. There's a lot more accessibility to like research opportunities. And yeah, even volunteering can be done online for certain organizations. You just have to kind of do your research on it. So I think that is it for questions. I'm gonna just post our email on the screen. So if anybody has like any other questions, you can just shoot us an email on karachi@educationusa.org, and we would be happy to answer them. But yeah, thank you everyone for attending today's session and for participating. And I hope that you seriously think about maybe adding some ECAs to your college application, especially if US is your first choice for colleges next year. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye.